Oh, it's like iCloud. If you get an iPhone, I can see that.
Or like if you like when you join social media. Yeah.
Ah,
Or if you can
okay.
like gaming, play Fortnite or Roblox or play.
Oh, you do need an email.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now whether it's your parents or your own. 19.
Okay.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
So I've always been a quick responder, but that sometimes pisses people off. Because it's not, like we're given 24 hours to respond, and sometimes it's good to sit on something. Like when you supervise in social work, oh gosh, Dr. Perdomo said the dude who walks around and buys books is trying to buy books. So we get free books as teachers. I don't know if anybody ever knew that. And there's this dude who'll come around and he'll throw you $10 for a book. Well, so I'll ask this again though. Who has seen the poverty documentary called The Line? Have you guys ever had me before? Will you be bored if I share it again? Okay. I really infuse poverty into a lot of my course discussions because poverty, trauma, and all of that are a big thing. It will go back to also the eco map. Let's see here. Oh, he called. That's funny. Okay, if that's more comfortable for you, or if you like the lights on, that's okay too. Whatever you guys' preference. Hello. Have you had me before in class? Have you ever had me before in class? Okay, so you haven't seen The Line then either, I'm guessing. It's a poverty documentary called The Line. I wanted to give it a second for questions. Anybody online, and then go ahead and show it otherwise, if you're okay. Lights on or lights off?
Lights off is fine.
You could kill them. Whoever's closest wants to jump it. And we'll go. Poverty and trauma run hand in hand. There's just a lot of rich stuff on this. This came out from our last recession. Every 10 years, there's cyclic economic cycles. We will have a recession again, guaranteed. Like, it sucks, it's sad, you prepare for it. This was the last recession, so a lot of times I like to show this to prepare us. It might not have hit us yet as they gave us all those stimmy checks during COVID, but supposedly this year we're supposed to have another recession.
The have and the have-nots. 9. The place that people on the bottom are trying to get to, and the place that people on the top are trying to keep from going below. They don't want to look below it either. They don't want to see what's down there because that'll make them feel too guilty about being above it.
The line is the firing line in which people face survival or death. And sometimes the person holding the gun is their neighbor, and sometimes it's their congressman or their alderman who's not doing enough to help them.
The line is where you are always in a position to give help. And then for the first time, this line of I've gone from being somebody who could help to being somebody who needs help.
There's a certain amount of pride that comes in being independent. And there's a certain amount of shame that comes into having to beg for every little thing that you get.
23,000 is no money, nearly. And yet I could still see families who make 35,000, who are still poor, who are still about to lose their home, who still can't afford groceries.
When you start trying to tell people about poverty, they start making excuses and making heartless statements about why people are in poverty, and they don't even have a clue. They don't even have a clue.
Some of the most prevalent and damaging stereotypes about poor people are that they're lazy, that they're stupid, they don't have any skills, prefer poverty, that they can't take care of their families.
Poor people are working harder, just trying.
So these stats may be a little different because this was made a while ago. Like I said, it was the last major recession that we had. And with economic cycles, usually 7 to 10 years is the normal cycle for a recession. You have like tops and then bottoms. They did print a lot of money during COVID, so that extended no recession for a few years, but some are calling for it this year.
Trying to keep their heads above water than we can even imagine. It's hard.
It doesn't matter if you have to stand in line and kind of feel bad about yourself, that you're a failure. You have to cross that line to be able to keep the lights on, to be able to keep feeding your kids.
So that stat, I didn't stop it in time, but it's 1 in 4 children live in poverty. A lot of times poverty is more affecting more children, especially nowadays. So that's become one of the ACEs that we talked about in the last class, the adverse childhood experiences. So 1 in 4 kids.
Be you without a house, wondering if they're gonna go put you out. But for the grace of God, because a lot of these people had jobs, have degrees, did everything right, but the bottom fell out. And that bottom was that line. They went below that line.
DuPage County is considered one of the richest counties in the state of Illinois, probably one of the top 50 counties in the country as far as per capita income. So there are a lot of well-educated, middle-class, upper-middle-class people that live here. There's also the part of the county that people don't talk about. There's the about 10% of the population that lives at or below the federal poverty line.
Morning. How you doing?
Good morning.
Here you go. You're all set.
Thank you. Just have a seat over there. Okay, thanks.
I remember the first time that I tried to go, I just couldn't do it. I drove there and I sat there and I couldn't get out of the car. And the second time I got out of the car, went in line and then just got either impatient or just sort of embarrassed and just kind of walked away. Because you just don't want to admit that you're that defeated. You've been brought up never to be a charity case, never to have to ask for help, and all in that position where you got nowhere else to go. And it's hard.
You're here for food pantry today?
Right.
And you have a birthday bag for Jason?
Yes,
Good. All right, how old is Jason?
it's gonna be 12.
Suburban poverty is now at currently higher rate than urban poverty. It's been a tidal wave over the last 5 years, whereas maybe before it was a trickle, now it's just suddenly, people standing outside the door of the food pantry waiting for us to open. There's a desperation, and all the organizations haven't been ready to deal with the numbers of people coming through their doors. Private organizations are a drop in the bucket compared to the federal assistance programs. And so I think there's got to be a partnership. We certainly know that we have a responsibility to do the job that we're doing, and we want to do the job we're doing, but we can't do it alone. We need the resources of the government to help.
So you said 2 from here,
Right.
and then 1 from here. Okay. Okay.
Sample size?
All right. 1 box of cereal. Okay. All right. Should I go healthy or what the kids like?
Everyone comes here. It's people that have grown up in poverty to people that had six-figure jobs that were running companies that have lost their job. So they're at the end of the rope and they end up here because they don't have anywhere else to turn.
I'm 48 years old and I have 3 kids, single dad, got a daughter who's 17, and 2 sons. They're 14 and 11. It'll be 12 on Tuesday or Wednesday. So.
Okay. All right.
I was in banking as senior vice president, making 6 figures. I was very comfortable. Then the last bank I was at was acquired, went off on my own, and started to organize banks kind of at the perfect wrong time in a perfect storm, and kind of everything fell apart from that.
Big ham for Sam.
Okay.
Also a big turkey in the back.
My wife at that time filed for divorce because we were in an affluent town. Kind of the stress of all it took its toll on our marriage, and pretty much that was it. I had to decide what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I had always in the back of my mind thought about teaching. My mom was a teacher, my grandmother was a teacher, my sister was a teacher, so I kind of thought, well, maybe this is my signal to make that transition. Sometimes you just feel like you're sending your resume into a black hole. You talk, to a principal or you follow up and they're like, we've got 4,000 applicants. And you're like, okay, how do I get noticed? How do I do anything? Pretty much I've been on my own for 2 years, trying to make by on substitute teaching income, trying to make by on any tutoring income I can get on the side. In substitute teaching, you're looking at $85 to $100 a day, depending if you get called into work that day. And usually it's last minute. You may get a phone call at 5:30 in the morning. For me, best case, if I'm working almost every day, I can make $12,000. That would be the best I could do.
During the last recession, they extended the unemployment benefits. Usually it's 26. If you don't find a job in those half a year, you go to the 52 is a full year.
I never thought I would be in that position. I was a straight A student. I got a high ACT, went to a great school, graduated high honors. Everything is roses. Everything's perfect in your life. Coffee, always desperate for coffee. You have to work really hard to find the way to get by. The government isn't really seeking you out to say, we want to help you get you back on your feet.
All the bread you want?
Oh, the bread? Okay. All right. I mean, I'm insulted if somebody says, John, you're just lazy. You're just not trying. You just don't care. I'm like, I care. I care more than anybody. Thank you very much. It's sort of like being at a grocery store where not everything's been put on the shelf, but you just have to do the best you can and hope you get enough that can help you to get through each month. So you kind of put your own choices to the back burner because you just have to try to look and say, what do you really need?
I think that there's a real divide in this country and that people are struggling. The people that maybe are sort of untouched by the recession think that, unemployment is going down and, things are starting to look up. Businesses are starting to hire people. They're not seeing those people that have really, really been struggling for a long, long time.
have to make choices sometimes about what bills you're gonna pay. I mean, I've had my gas shut off, I've had my electric shut off. It's horrifying, and it's embarrassing when your kids go to turn on something and it doesn't work. It's the most horrible feeling in the world. Kids just don't get it. I think that's been the hardest thing, is just to answer the questions. You know, my youngest son just say, Dad, when are you gonna get your car fixed? You know, and it's like, well, when I can, you know. I have gotten used to checking for the expiration dates. Sometimes, you just gotta be careful. I mean, not that you're angry, you're grateful that you get what you get, but one time I got like some Velveeta that somebody donated. It was like 5 years old. It was like a black brick. I'm hoping that I can hold on for at least another year, maybe two. My kids at the age they are, I really want to be around for them, so moving isn't an option for me. I just feel like I've aged so much. It's like a constant kind of throbbing in your mind of like, what am I gonna do? I don't want to worry about this anymore, but you just don't know how to stop it. You're doing everything that every person says is the right thing to do, the right steps to follow, but it's not happening. And what if it doesn't happen? What if it doesn't happen fast enough?
I do think that a lot of the violence and a lot of what is going on right now is associated with people who are living with post-traumatic stress disorder. Trauma is simply a shift, a sudden shift in the ways in which we understand life and make meaning. Trauma in a psychological or more psychosocial sort of sense in which I'm poor now. Wow. What am I supposed to do? Or the other experience of people who have lived in poverty their entire life, and their mother did, and their grandmother did, and their grandmother did. So there's been generations of poverty, and there is a more deeper trauma, which is affiliated with this sort of nihilism or this sense of meaninglessness and hopelessness that says we will always be this way. This will always be the case.
So the next two cases, they talk more about Chicago and the inner city. Anybody here from Chicago? Any Chicagoans? Yeah. They're kind of describing their experiences there that mimic what I also see in my hometown of Cincinnati. We had this area called Over the Rhine for quite a while, and only recently it's been going through a gentrification process. Have you guys heard of gentrification? And it's obvious. So this is kind of the things they get into about their hometown.
We're on Monroe and Pulaski, and it's considered Cape Pulaski to Laramie because of the Carlisle Keeler case. And this is where I grew up, in this house, with my family, my father, my mother, my 2 sisters, and 3 brothers. My sister was going to play for church, which was about a block that way, about 2 blocks over. And she was walking, it was late, around 10 or so. She was coming down around the corner. She was shot and killed. She was shot in the head and killed. Police never came. They came for that night, but there was never an investigation. So as far as I'm concerned, they never found out who actually killed her. But that destroyed our family, pretty much. The beginning and the family that we knew. Just one bullet. We never recovered. One bullet. And we never recovered. I think the thing that bothers me the most is that my sister wasn't a statistic. She had a name. She had a family. She had people that loved her, who depended on her for their survival, literally for their survival emotionally. And it's hard for me even to come down this block. It was a long time that I could even drive down this block because I always think about the day that I heard the bullet.
It's crazy in these streets, and it's hard right now to start judging. But when you get enough pain and get enough kids, wondering if God still loves us. So I go by Jay Quest, and my music is what my ministry is. It's around helping people understand that you're human and that you have a ton of possibility and a ton of potential inside of you. And we need to hear that more in these communities of poverty. People are killing each other for some very plain reasons, because whether they're poor or not, in terms of a quantitative measurement, they feel poor. They feel like they need more. They feel less than human. They feel offended by their government. They feel offended by their neighbor. It's crazy, it's a world we create. It's like my dreams are rich. It's pain and
Most of the young people where I grew up in K-Town, they didn't expect to live past 18, 20, because their friends are dying like, around them. Like this is literally a war. They never know from one day to the next. If you're gonna wake up and your friend's gonna be gone, or if it's gonna be you. So there is no hope. You know why they're not so keen on education? Because education means you plan to have a future. They don't plan to have a future. They think that the streets are gonna kill them. That's their reality. One of my first jobs was working at a bank downtown. And when I would say to people where I came from, where I lived, they would be so shocked. Really? You lived over there? Because they don't expect people from K-Town or certain areas to be able to get out and get good jobs and to actually look like success. I was one of the youngest supervisors at the bank. And I didn't have my first child till I was 30. I didn't have to depend on anyone, and all the bottom fell out in one fall. It's just all the bottom fell out. There was a screw. My foot got caught in the screw, and I fell head first, 14 feet, into a wall. I broke my arm in two places. I knocked my brain into my spinal column. So it's caused me to start having strokes. I ended up having to have brain surgery where they had to take a big piece of my skull out so my brain could breathe. It took me 15, 20 years to finally get back to where I could be up and around it. And keep in mind, I had a 7-month-old, a 2-year-old, and a 6-year-old. I knew I needed to leave, to move out of that neighborhood when my son turned 7.
See, I had a lot of fun as a child running up and down the block. I didn't realize that I was around one of the biggest drug operations right behind my house. There was a lot of stuff being sold in and out through there. They'd ask me to take something to someone else. No, I've done that in the building, and I didn't even realize what I was doing. I was just delivering, thinking, hey, they asked me to take this down.
Some of these little boys I knew were bad news. He didn't, but I knew. This house that we live in now used to belong to my parents. And then when my father passed, the house was just too much for my mother to handle. So my sister, my brother, myself, we all moved out here to live with my mom. And together we made it a community home, which is what, quite often happens when people are trying to, get out of a bad situation. Right after, about a year after my accident, I realized that I would not be the same. And I went on disability. And disability gave me $1,000. It was, at that time, it was like $900 a month. I had 3 children. They gave me $900 a month for me, and they gave me $122, I think, for each child. Keep in mind, that's to pay my rent. I had food stamps, but it wasn't a lot, so a lot of times we would run out of food stamps. It's not that much stuff in here. Yeah, but it's not as burning. Oh, proceed. Giving my children hope, that was the hard part, because they went to a private school, so they lived with all these people who were very well off, who drove nice cars, whose parents were giving them credit cards to spend carte blanche. And then they came back here, and I'm saying, no, we don't buy name brand gym shoes. No, we're not going out to eat. We gotta do whatever mama's got to cook. It was disappointing from a mother's point, because I wanted to give them the best. And I always thought when I had my children, I was going to be able to shower them. That was my desire. I think most parents, that was my desire, but I wasn't able to do that.
Were you guys old enough to remember when there was an oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico that killed all the sea creatures down there? That's kind of what this one was about. So it's just interesting often, and why on assessment we ask these if there ever was a traumatic event, as oftentimes you'll associate trauma with 1 or 2 events, and it can be life changing. So I think it was, yeah, and it just like there's always something, but it's interesting how it does connect back to cheap oil, cheap electric, because I until I took a permaculture course at the University of Cincinnati, I didn't understand how connected we were also to energy in general, like the car, the electric, the gas, the ability to, flip a switch, not have to chop wood to heat my house and cook food without a fire. Then when I lived in El Salvador, Nicaragua, I saw the difference of energy there and where it is. It's really different here. But that's why we go after those cheap oil locations that are either in the ocean. I think tar sands or even fracking has become more popular.
I was born and raised in this little town called Davant, Louisiana, in 1945. Just about everyone in this community had done fishing of one type or another, either crab fishing, shrimping, or oystering, at least part-time. It was a wonderful way to make a living. God gave us a heaven here, a gold mine. It was there for the taking. Anyone that wanted to make a good, honest living could do it. All they needed was a strong back and a little bit of brains. No matter what time of year it was, we were either shrimping, crabbing, dredging oysters. A person that didn't have any work could come to this marina, go by the conveyance where they were unloading in the evening, and hey, I need a job. Okay, show up here tomorrow morning. You had a job. The people of this area, this entire area, depend on the environment. They depend on what God gave us. And God gave us a lot down here, but we didn't know how to take care of it.
Just a fallen empire, slowly flowing through my head.
someone told me 10 years ago that this place would be this dormant, I'd never believed it. I never would have believed it. But it's happened, and it's happened so quickly. It's just unimaginable. I don't know if it's because of the natural disaster that we had with Katrina or the oil spill. The natural resources are not there anymore. The coastline is washing away. There's places that when I was in high school, we used to go out and hunt rabbits. And now those places don't exist. They're all gone. They're gone. Completely gone. It's a minimum, on average, of 3 years before that oyster's ready for the market to be harvested. Next year, there'll be no oysters. For 3 years, there won't be any oysters. And this year, we had a very low harvest of shrimp. So what's going to happen? I don't know. I don't have any confidence in the future. Unless we get a drastic change, a sudden change in the amount of seafood and the prices, there's no way that I can continue to do this and survive with it. Because all I am doing now is losing money. You know? Just can't do it. The numbers don't add up. They just don't. I don't worry about myself that much. It's only just me and Bonnie. We'll survive. But my children, I worry about my children. This community, I've seen it change not only with income, but I can see a change in the people. The people that are still here are not happy anymore. The people were always jolly. They didn't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow was taken care of. And now everyone's worried. They're all stressed. Catholic Charities was here up until last week paying people's utilities for them. They couldn't pay them. Now they're gone. They left last week. So a lot of these families that were dependent on that, they don't even have that now. So in this great United States, believe it or not, we're going to have people down here that are going to have their electricity cut off. And they're going to be living that way. I hope that it gets better. Realistic, I don't see it. It's just a culture, the whole culture. The whole culture is gone.
So that at least don't end on a depressing note. And as a social worker, sometimes you'll have folks that come to you that say, and that's at times diagnosable depression, that they don't see any way out of it. Like they don't see any way out of the hole. Like all these, ecological things are going on all around them, be it family, work, school. And, we deal with it as we get through our own studies and education. So as a social worker, bringing hope to some of that, which I think this last one ends on 12 minutes.
Poverty is struggling to make things work. When you have to struggle paycheck to paycheck, that's poverty. You try to fight yourself out of it, but you can't. You can't. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, with my two sisters and my brother, my mother, and my father until my father decided to just leave the house and leave us by ourselves, which hurt my mother mentally and got her unstable. We would have never survived if welfare didn't approve us and we were getting food stamps every month. That's not me by myself. I would have been able to do it, and I had to give up going to college. Went down to the racetrack in New York City with a friend of mine, started hop walking horses coming off the track, and that's where I started working, which was at the racetrack, and turned around and did it for 22 years. It was every day, 365 days a year, and that was it. There was never a day off. I came here to North Carolina after I stopped working at the racetrack. And when you come off of that, everybody's like, okay, so what skill do you have? It's like, you really don't. You know, I had the skill of putting horses on a racetrack. I was in the shelter 3 months. It's a hard thing because North Carolina, the unemployment rate is 9.4. It's one of the highest in the United States. Being in the shelter, I wasn't ashamed of it. I did it on my own. I wasn't there because I used drugs, because I was an alcoholic. I refused to sleep in the street. I wasn't going to get put in jail for sleeping in the street. Every day, I used to get up, get dressed, and go out to look for a job and stuff like that. And then when I found out about Jim Noble's restaurant and the church services that they have here, and I introduced myself.
It is a 501c faith-based, not-for-profit restaurant. And that's unusual. In fact, there's not been many done like this, I don't think. And it really has two parts. One is to help raise money from a non-profit state, and we're going to give all the profits away to help people poor. Secondly, King's Kitchen Restoration Program, which is a discipleship, life-changing program to help people get back on their feet through on-the-job training, obviously, Bible study, discipleship. Even though it's a ministry, we also are a restaurant, and we have to compete, and we have to execute, and we have to run the restaurant right or the whole thing will fall. And this is not an easy industry to be in anyway. The restaurant business is tough.
In front of you, beside you. I came here and I volunteered here, and they threw me as a dishwasher. I've never worked in a restaurant before. Cole, we got a fourth out getting up. And it shocked everybody how fast I pick it up. When I put my mind to something that I really want to do, I know I can do it. I'll come with a big tray. Thank you for calling King's Kitchen this afternoon. This is James. How can I assist you? One day, Chef Jesse came up to me. He goes, we all came together. We're hiring you. I said, you kidding? He goes, you start tomorrow. Would you like me to take your plate from you?
Thank you, yes.
Is everything okay? Please come back. And when I started working here, they worked with my hours down at the shelter. They saved me a bed. And when I got my first paycheck, I looked in the paper and saw this place and took the bus down there, filled out the application, and there was a 1-bedroom apartment ready. And that was the last time the shelter saw me. When I got off the bus, I put my hand in my pocket and I had the keys to my own place. And when I opened up the door, I was like, you're home. The first thing that I did, I called up my two sisters and my brother. Your brother is just fine. Your brother's fine. And my sister goes, you right in the shelter? I said, yep. He said, I got my own place and everything. Adam, these are the only dishes that don't match over here. 8 months later, I'm still here. I'm the head bus boy. Please come again. I love I don't stop. When I come in the morning, I get up an hour before my shift starts. How you doing? How's everything? My income right now, I would make in a year between about $11,000 to $15,000. People
So the
probably
Economic
live
Poverty Institute does research on some of these and are showing more people than ever before are working a few full-time jobs at this point. So sometimes 100 hours a week, which is crazy.
poverty-stricken areas. People who have money don't even go close to where those people live. You think they worry about who's living on the street? No, because they were never part of it. And if you're not part of it, why think about it? Try to climb the ladder by yourself sometimes. It's hard. I don't judge people, and I hope that people don't judge me. And that's how I've always lived.
I think hope is important for people who are in poverty because that's the only thing that's going to stop them from making a desperate move to make life better. If you have no hope and you don't think Superman's coming, you may jump yourself. And when I say jump, I don't mean killing yourself. I mean making rash decisions and doing things that may be even uncharacteristic for yourself, but because you're so desperate.
We cannot be silent while that happens. We cannot say, oh, well, that's on them. No, systems need to be broken to stop poverty too. Policy needs to change in order to stop poverty. And there need to be people in place who can properly change policy to help poverty. At the same time, there are people who are poor who need to know that there's a way out of this and need to know that they are more than their poverty. Because I believe that if we tell people that they are better than they think they are, that they will do better than they think they can.
This is not the end. We will shine like a star. Every other day, you'll see like gang violence going on outside of school or kids fighting. But what really keep me calm is either drawing or playing basketball.
We bring young people in, and most of them have already either dropped out or are in situations where they're not doing well in school.
Where I come from.
This component is around adding creativity to their life, creativity and dignity, the two key words here, and saying, okay, you have not only something to learn in terms of math and science towards getting your GED, but you have a story to tell. You've seen something. And what I want to do is help you tell that story. We want to help you tell that story because once you can tell that story, you can own your life. You own your identity. So helping them to tell those stories is one way of giving them hope in the midst of what they're going through. Poor is not what you are. Poor is part of what you are, and it's a situation that can change.
open my eyes wide, wide. This is not our last. This is not our last breath. We will open our
I started a nonprofit called Born to Be Light, and I came up with a pledge. Born to Be Light is a nonprofit organization dedicated to the aggressive promotion of nonviolence. And they take the pledge, and the pledge is right on the front, and it says, I wear this band to take a stand against violence. I pledge to be the change you see in my home and community because I'm a light. So I go around to the schools and communities and functions, and I have the people wear the bands. I have them take the pledge, and it works. It really works. So I'm not just sitting back waiting for somebody to give me something. I'm trying to help myself. I'm trying to help my community. I understand that people might look at me and say, well, you're getting a handout. You're on disability. But I promise you, if I could be anything but on disability, I would. And I've done everything that I can do to make myself better. I've written a book. I've gone back to school. I've done a CD. I do outreach programs. I do everything that I'm supposed to do. So the fact that I'm still on disability is through no fault of mine. But since my accident, I haven't had one day that I haven't had pain, but it hasn't stopped me from going to school and being on the dean's list and a president's scholar. It hasn't stopped me.
This is not the end. This is not the end of our lives. We will shine like a star.
I'm doing mechanics, I'm working, I do computers, I do art and music. I'm doing fire safety to try to become a fireman. Though I am poor, I do not consider myself poor because I feel like as long as there's a person watching over me, as long as I'm connected with my family, and as long as my legs and body work and I'm able to go out and make some money, there's no way that I will feel poor.
Yeah. Advocates in the Theocratic rule.
So you'll get a lot of. My first internship was in Lexington, Kentucky, when I did social work. You guys all will do an internship. Anybody know where you want to do your internships? Okay. Yes.
Why do you mind at Children's?
Oh yeah, Children's Hospital. Okay, medical social work. I also did not know a lot. When I first got into social work, I actually didn't just want to do, after living in Salvador, Nicaragua, and then over the Rhine with our service learning semester down there. I just wanted to do homeless advocacy and addiction recovery. So my first internship, you guys always do one in undergrad, so I think it's about 400 hours. In grad school, because I had a bachelor's in psychology and not social work, I had to do 3 in graduate school. So you guys get to cut that. So your senior year, you're basically doing your first year of graduate school. And you do your internship, take practice 1, 2, and 3. Practice 1 is working with individuals. Practice 2 is working with groups, learn how to run a group. Practice 3 is advocacy and learning how to do like legislative policy advocating type of stuff. Those are baseline social work classes. I had to get those in my first year of grad school because you guys get it in undergrad, you get to cut out like your first year of grad school. But I worked at a place called Hope Center. It was a homeless shelter. It was in 2001, so I guess I was 23 years old and didn't know what the hell I was doing. So luckily in classics, trained for that, in graduate work, you're trained for clinical patient diagnosis, interventions, things that you do with them. At that internship, it was both a homeless shelter and an addiction recovery place. So those who wanted to stay in general population could, and those who wanted to get sober and clean, they actually had kind of like the efficiency, the last case they show here. He had kind of an efficiency apartment. They would have those, but you had to breathalyze every night. And if you blew sober, you green means good. You go and stand there. If you were drinking again, you had to go back and stay with general population. So they kind of did, it was a motivational interviewing type of an approach. Those who wanted to be sober were able to. Those who didn't want to be sober, they tried not to judge them. You know, some homeless shelters actually wouldn't even let you in, I think, if you did below a certain 0.01 or point, you know, whatever it may have been. So, and that's why some people choose to sleep under a bridge or in a tent, because they want to choose to still drink, and that's okay. So you'll get lots of different situations. A lot of times it is the physical that comes first. So it could be basic needs, food, water, shelter. That could be what brings you. And then the mental comes next, dealing with the mental, dealing with some programs of recovery do body, mind, and spirit. So even a spiritual approach. But I know we had just a few more slides finishing because we're at the end. This thing about healthy babies need support and stimulation. We all need that, but in your first 3 years especially, you need that in the home. And that's why so many social workers, another internship place you can do is an intervention program that provides support, education, or encourage prenatal care, because that decreases the risk of abuse. That's why a lot of federal funds go towards those. Help Me Grow is an example of one. Has anybody ever heard of some of the programs that are federally funded, such as Help Me Grow or other therapeutic foster care? That's another internship place that are possibilities and options. If you found one and there's a BSW working there and we can add it in to our list here at Central, we're always open to that too. The soon-to-be Dr. Jackson always takes us. She has a lot of good placements. Yep.
Planned Parenthood's right, a part of those federally funded support, but just for.
I think so. I think so. I think somebody's done their internship there. It depends on if they have a BSW on staff. So that's the key. Like if they have somebody with the bachelor's and ideally a license, but as long as they have a bachelor's, that's one. But the 19 programs at Lighthouse, now you're making me want to look them up because they had so many programs that I always joke that every 2 or 3 years you kind of switch jobs in social work to prevent burnout. And it happens. Like you get trained for 2 years to get your independent license. So often you'll get a BSW. With that, you can get your LSW. In 11 months, you can get an MSW. So licensed social work, bachelor's of social work, master's. 2 years with your master's and license, you can then apply to get your independent license. That's when you can run your own business. So some people choose to infuse spirituality into it. Some people do it how they do. Yes.
What can I ask for major? I'm assuming your BSW, MSW, or LSW to do clinical social work?
They clinically train you in graduate school. Like we give you a little bit with assessment and diagnosis, but because in the state of Ohio, you can, with just your license, LSW, you can do therapy.
Mm-hmm.
But they call it dependent licensure. You're dependent on a supervisor, basically. Mm-hmm. So they sign off on everything that you write, like your notes, your diagnosis. When you get your independent license, that's where you can right off into the sunset. What? Okay. So when you get the LISW, and that's 150 hours of supervision over 2 years, which I still supervise at hospice to keep my supervision active. And I do 2 hours a week. So technically they get 104 hours every year with 52 weeks. And then in another half year, they would get the other 50 hours. So they could be done with their supervision in a year and a half, but they always make you wait 2 years to like take the test and apply for the independent license.
So you seem to allude, so the license, like the licensed social work, what does that require schooling wise?
Bachelor's.
Okay,
The first
so
level
you said
is-
it, the bachelor's, so it's not until after the bachelor's you can really do anything in social work. Really?
Correct. If you
Okay.
want your independent license, you do need to get a master's in social work.
You said before that there was some kind of licensure. No?
So you can get just the LSW is a license in social work. It's considered a dependent license. So you can work anywhere. You just are dependent on a supervisor to sign off on.
And that requires what in relation to school?
Just a bachelor's.
So you still need a bachelor's. I'm
Just a bachelor's.
brainstorming ways to.
Yeah, and if you want to shortcut it, some people do their CDCA only requires an associate's.
That's what I'm curious about.
Yes.
The CDCA.
Did I send you any of that stuff yet? I have the full test and everything. I could send. It's a 2-year chemical dependency counselor assistantship. Anybody ever heard of that before? So that's another way that folks do licensed work. It is specific to the addictions field, so it is very specific. But there was $400 million infused in Ohio for the CDC for like chemical addiction recoveries.
I'm curious. The reason I ask is because that's the first information that I've gotten that opens up a possibility. I'm wondering if there's a way to go about schooling, starting from scratch, that would allow you to get a job in the field before you achieve your goals.
There's a lot of people that are, I know, currently working in the field before they're graduating right now. Are any of you guys in the classroom today? I know in my practice classes I have a few. So often they're doing kind of what I think you described you're doing, but I think they get 14 an hour. It is a full-time job, so they're like case managers.
I get more than that. I'm doing a job that requires usually a bachelor's in psychology, but because of my experience, there's an exception made. But
Okay.
I'm curious about. I'm just curious about the social, like what I could do. Like that's the first I've heard of anything that said that's even alluded to the fact that maybe before a bachelor's. You can
Chemical dependency counselor. I'll send you these. I have the CDCA study guide, and I did like the answers. If you guys want it, type in your email and then hit send. As I have it in Dropbox, so I got a bunch of those. So yeah, there's a way. And there they kind of honor street smarts is what they're doing. I know that sounds weird, but a lot of times folks that work in addiction recovery also have experience or people in their lives that have gone through addiction recovery. So they kind of honor your street smarts in a sense, and so you can get licensed with that CDCA right out of the gate. And
Yeah, that's why I'm curious. I actually worked most of my experiences in people with addiction.
okay,
Similar things.
yes, that is select all, copy another send. This I'm happy to send it. Oh, that's the answer guide. Hey, that's important. So, what's that? So here's all places at Lighthouse. I would say they have 19 different programs, usually 19 different programs, usually. So they've got foster care and adoption. They've got juvenile justice services. They have 2 homeless shelters. So one is for ages 18 to 24. The other is for ages, shoot, I messed up the address again. I tried to copy it.
Just my last and first name, Gmail.
Anybody else want the study guide? All you overachievers in here, I get it. It's Ohio Rise, another one, outpatient mental health services. So we'll also do intensive outpatient. I worked at Lighthouse for 7 years and then personal responsibility, education program, and then residential treatment services. So the other homeless shelter they had was for folks 13 to 18. So those are just some. We always took interns here at Lighthouse, and that was, and yeah, you could even kind of get your foot in the door with some of the volunteering things that they had. But they start at a young age. This is where I'm probably going to wait until next week, but getting into infant mortality. So in the U.S., we're higher than most developed nations. That's what's kind of crazy. Thank you. Anybody else?
You talking about the mortality?